Welcome back, friends, to this trilogy on Mike Reads the World, a trilogy that I have put together. We began with Aura by Carlos Fuentes, and then now we are talking about Mema by Daniel Mengara from Gabon, born originally from Gabon. And we will continue later tonight with Tula from Lithuania. Of course, the only thing I knew was connecting them was four-letter women's names, but it turns out they all have elements of spooky folk tales and haunting atmospheres. Um, Mema, not as much. I mean, the focus of this book, it really is just an element of this book, but the title refers to the narrator's mother. I remember Mema, mother, my mother. Yes, another book that begins with the description of the mother. We had Bolivia's Juan de la Rosa, and then recently we had Home in the World by Tagore. But this book takes it further, where the mother is actually the main character of the story, and the narrator is not. So it is interesting to notice that in this little trilogy, the relationship of the narrator to the titular woman is different in each case. In Aura, it's a mysterious woman that arouses great passion in you, as it is narrated in second person. In Mema now, we have a man pondering on his mother and telling her story, but not just her story, but how it is interconnected with the entire village. In fact, the introduction almost throws you off a little bit because it deals with the sort of how this community life, this small village life in Gabon, how when there is a marital dispute, in this case, a husband beating his wife, she runs off to her sort of side of the village, and there's sort of the standoff between the two sides, and it kind of talks about how resolving this marital dispute is not just the individuals, it's not the woman and the man. The entire community ends up having to play a part in resolving this marital dispute. But that's sort of like an introduction, and it almost in the beginning seems to it shows how, without romanticizing this community life, it shows how it functionally works, and it's going to play a bigger part as the novella goes on. I just want to say, I thought this one was really outstanding. Like, this is one of the best of the region I've read. It sets up the stage with this sort of seemingly unrelated community event, and then it starts getting really personal. The Mema is a real badass woman. She doesn't let anybody mess with her honor or her children, and sometimes her stubbornness and her resilience is a weakness as much as it is a strength. So it's really a kind of a double-edged sword for her in the book. Her against the warnings and threats of villagers and the village priest, she is trying to help her ailing husband, who's suffering from some kind of disease, and so she goes to a sort of a prohibited medicine man, and the priest and the other villagers are telling her not to do this really adamantly. And this medicine man is supposedly connected with some old tribal enemies, or from what I could understand, and he ends up giving this husband, some sort of psychotropic substance, and he perishes during this when he takes this brew. And so, of course, the blame for all this falls on Mema, and her two daughters die the following day. But she still has her son, and this is sort of the setup where Mema is a woman who becomes isolated due to these customs and these, I guess some would call them superstitions, but just this is a worldview here. I mean, these things probably exist for a reason in these societies, so I don't want to just say superstitions necessarily. And there's this really interesting section in the middle that talks about the beliefs and sort of that some people in the village are these sort of vampire-like beings, while the rest are sort of innocents. There's this the society or the culture of this village is very much like the game of werewolf in the way it's set up, in the sense that in every, you get this really creepy sense that in every village there's some people that, at night are using witchcraft, or are like sort of spiritual vampires, and they're even, they're really described like vampires, and they go out at night and kind of prey on the others, and these sort of manipulative behind the scenes people that but then there's the good vampires, and the word is not vampire, by the way. I'm not going back to look up what the word actually is. I think you should read it yourself for sure. This one I for sure would recommend to anybody. And there's the good vampires, to use this kind of stupid metaphor, that help protect the village from these people. So, and then there's kind of a story within the story. But I was just saying a couple videos ago where I don't like when characters will break, kind of just be telling some really important events to another character, and it's written like in dialogue. In this one, a chapter just opens up with this totally unrelated story, and then you find out afterward that it's a story that Mema is telling to the narrator, her young 6-year-old son at the time. And she tells the son, I want you to be like this hero in the story. And it's the story is awesome. There's illusions and things, and then of course there is some colonial elements to the story. There is some this viewing of, there are two different worlds in this region. There is the black man's world, there's the white man's world, and this is all part of the dynamic as well, and an important element to the story. But it's an element. I never felt like it became the focus. The real element of this story is painting, I think, this really interesting, deep story rooted in the sort of village culture of this region, rural culture. So I just think this book is fantastic on all fronts. Like, to me, this should be a classic. That's sort of the creepy folklore elements, as I mentioned, are what kind of connect it to the themes of the other stories. The vampire thing, it just really, it was a great centerpiece to this sort of trilogy of short novellas. And yeah, again, as I said, not very long. It's about 122 pages. Probably, took a few hours to read. And it was just, I was really attached to every character, even when it broke into the sort of the stories within the story. I was attached to those characters because then they were immediately related to the actual story. It was just so good. I feel like I wrote some other note here. It definitely, it doesn't, like I said, romanticize village life or village culture, especially when Mema becomes isolated for the reasons I mentioned, and it's kind of that small town, big hell, pueblo chico, infierno grande, that phrase. I always am reminded of that reading The World, that small towns are the same everywhere you go. And the culture may change. There might be specifics that change, but there are some real and I know it's kind of silly to say universals or whatever. There's a lot of universals, but the fact is, when a book is really good, it can break through the sort of cultural or skin color differences or whatever differences you want to think that these people are so different from you, or wealth differences. It's like, I thought about in an office setting, people always talk about, like, we have kind of an energy vampire around the office. Have you ever been in an office where somebody said that? That we go through our lives and we often find ourselves in situations where we're playing this game of, werewolves and villagers. Who's the werewolf? And these sort of witch hunts. And yeah, this book is full of kind of this sort of mysterious backdrop of witchcraft, and it's as much a study of the psychology of, the witch hunt, and the the spiritual searching, or I don't know, the ways that humans use spirituality to manipulate things, or to regulate society, even on a small scale. You can see all that in this book, I think, and it's really outstanding because it's in a part of the world where I haven't experienced that. West Africa. It's really the first of its kind in the region that I've read so far. Central West Africa. I can also sort of relate some of the things that happen in this book to the book I read for Lesotho, Shaka, which is from the 1920s or maybe earlier. I can't remember. But really fantastic book as well. Check out Shaka by Thomas Mafolo from Lesotho as well. If you enjoy this book as well, a lot of similarities. This is actually, this is one of the best I've read, honestly. One of my favorites. So with that, I am going to try to finish Tula. I still have like half the book to go, so we'll see if I get to it tonight or not. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.